This is the 80s Show on iHeartRadio.
Let's go. Come on, let's go. Say ho, ho. Say ho, whoa, ho, whoa. Let's start the show. Let's start the show. Let's start the show. Let's start the show.
So, if you are someone that pays any attention to media whatsoever, if you're someone that pays any attention to media whatsoever, then there's a very good chance that you've heard this word disruption, or to disrupt, or the disruptors bandied around with alarming frequency recently. There's all sorts of people that like to trot that expression out in reference to paradigm shifting, or companies that are seen as maverick and doing new things. Like the morning guy at one of the stations I work at had to go interview U2 recently. And when you interview U2 and you're a local morning guy, the interview goes the way they want it to go, not the way you want it to go. And I'm sure he would never cop to this, but I did hear him in the interview describe U2 as, once again, going back through your history, your disruptors, doing this, doing that, doing the other. U2, the disruptors. And I was like, well, that's clearly something that he's been fed. And that's cool. It's a watchword at the moment. But why is there such a preponderance over this expression, disruptors, at the moment? Well, it's because we are, as a society, not just in America, but I think in the world, kind of getting to a tipping point, a place where we're sick of the status quo, a place where we're sort of not interested in doing things the way they've been done for the last 30 years, because they've led us to a point where things, and the general consensus is, things are clearly not working. Call it our political system, call it our day-to-day lives, call it whatever the hell you want to call it. There's a general sense, not only in America, but I think all around the world, that some change would be nice. Not the type of change that we voted for a couple of years ago. Well, I say we, I mean America, because Obama got elected. I pulled myself out of that particular race. I was like, I could pull the lever for this guy who I don't trust and this guy who I don't like. No, thanks. I'm going to pass and say that these guys are both doofuses, and I don't look forward to the next 4 to 8 years. But that being said, why was it so easy to run on a campaign of hope and change? Nebulous variables that really mean nothing. You throw that word change in there, and people genuinely want that. I don't think anyone's really looking to maintain the status quo at the moment. I think people want change. This show exists because I was willing to disrupt things. I was willing to get out of line. I was willing to circumvent a chain of authority when it came to getting this show on the air. I remember going, I really want to do talk radio. And I remember going to the program director of one of the stations down the hall from me and being like, yo, I'm really good. Here's some of my stuff. And, saying I'm really good, here's some of my stuff is kind of a loaded thing. And when a record label rep comes to me with a band or some music and goes, this is really good, you're really going to like it. Generally speaking, I make up my mind that I'm not going to like it before I've ever even put it in the old CD player. But that being said, in this particular case, my optimism, with regard to the fact that I felt like I was going to be able to do something, my optimism with regard to the fact that I was going to be able to do something was well placed, at least in terms of thinking that what we were doing was good. Because program director of this station came back to me and said, man, this is really great. This is really cool. This is, you got chops, you got skills, you kept me entertained. I was like, sweet. Well, you've got a gig opening up, and can you put me on the air? And he was like, no, management will never go for it. And I was like, why? He's like, well, this is a station that's got Glenn Beck and Rush Limbaugh on it, and look at you. You're this backward baseball cap wearing guy that looks like an overgrown skater kid that should be hanging around outside of a 7-Eleven, not someone that should be speaking to 25 to 54-year-old males about their lives and how politics and the events of today affect it. And I was like, wow, for one teeny tiny second, I had an idea what it was like to be prejudged, the victim of a prejudice, a prejudgment with regard to how I look. And that was just a matter of a haircut and changing up my wardrobe. And I thought, it must be horrible to be born into a color of skin where people are going to make assumptions about you with regard to your abilities in the workplace based on how you look. That's got to be a tough one. And that gave me a little bit of an insight to something. I was mad about that for days. And then I realized what must it be mad about, and what must it be like to be mad about it your entire life because you've got no control over it. But that's an aside. So what did I do? I went, screw this. I know this is good. And I circumvented a chain of authority. I fired off an email to the gods of talk radio, went over everyone's head possible, and I put a link to my stuff. I was like, here's my stuff. I think I'm good, but I've been told I'll never work in talk radio because I look like this. And I attached a picture of myself, and like I mentioned, overgrown skater kid that looks like he should be hanging around a 7-Eleven. And not like that. And I attached a picture of Rush Limbaugh. I got 5 responses immediately, and I was on the air in about 2 days. Why? Because I was willing to disrupt, as much of a cheesy watchword as that is. I was able to challenge the status quo and got results almost instantly. So when somebody tells you you can't do something, something's not possible, know this. People are dying for change. And though people may scoff or mock what you've got on your mind, there's a very good chance it's exactly where they know deep in their heart of hearts they want to go.
iHeartRadio goes one-on-one with Jimmy Page to talk about the beginning of he and Robert Plant's musical partnership.
I had material like Dazed and Confused. I had the whole arrangement together of Baby, I'm Gonna Leave You and the source of the verse. And it actually, I heard it on a Joan Baez in concert record. It's nothing like our version. But I did play him that original one. I thought it was, at the time, I thought it was a traditional song. I didn't know. Because I know that at the time those folk artists were doing lots of traditional songs. And plus she did like 3 in-concert albums. This is one of them, and I heard this track, and I thought that's really haunting. And along the way, even it was in the days of the Yardbirds, I'd come up with this whole interpretation of how it could be done. So I got into my house and I was sort of presenting him these sort of things, these ideas, and you know, we had a real good connection because he was, to be fair, even though he said he liked West Coast music or whatever, this clearly was never going to be anything like that. But he was up and open for the sort of things that I was sort of showing him, if you like. You know, I was opening up for him. So that was useful because, to be honest, if he hadn't sort of locked into it, then I'd have been looking for somebody else who was.
Keep listening to iHeartRadio for more Jimmy Page and all your favorite artists.
iHeartRadio goes one-on-one with the Imagine Dragons on the crossover appeal of their music.
We never created music trying to cater to like a niche. You know, we always created music that just we loved, that we embraced, and that meant something to us. And to see that it's appealed to a lot of different people, I think that's very cool.
Keep listening to iHeartRadio for more Imagine Dragons and all of your favorite artists.
Hey, you, what's that sound? Coming so loud from your radio dial.
Did you by any chance catch Mike Tyson on Jimmy Fallon last night?
I remember I jumped off a stoop because we went trick-or-treating with my parents, and I got trick-or-treating, and then I jumped off the stoop, tried to be Batman, and the thing just tore because It's just made out of, it's basically a
They
pea
have
sheet.
the, they have the Toy Hall of Fame now. And remember, we used to always get the little green army men back
Yeah,
in the
of
days?
course.
Yeah, that's going to make the Toy Hall of Fame this year.
You wouldn't get that for treats or anything.
No, but that was just every day you get that because, you know, you could...
How did your brain get there?
Excuse me?
How did you get there from Batman costume to the Green Army?
I got trick or treat confused with Christmas.
Yeah, here's the thing. That's a piece of audio that'll probably go viral, and people will be like, that Mike Tyson is crazy. He doesn't have together. He's a couple sandwiches short of a picnic. That's the kind of confusion that exists in my mind on a daily basis. I wish that wasn't incredibly commonplace, and I think the reason why that's so funny is because everybody does that. But, you know, it's Mike Tyson, so he's going to take the heat for it, and people are going to assume that he is, like I said, a couple sandwiches short of the proverbial picnic. Today in the show... And feel free to join in the conversation. I'm AD. You can tweet me at ADSXE. You can holler at super producer to the stars. Barry Funkhauser at Funk FM is where he bees. You can join in the conversation that way. But today in the show, you and I will discuss, well, is it the place of a bunch of angry liberal types to tell Indians, Native Americans rather? I say Indians because, well, it's the name of their high school sports team, and they're being told how to think and feel about it. It's an actual... Well, I've never really seen an example of people overstepping their boundaries in such an egregious kind of way. I've never seen sort of... Yeah, and this is why I don't subscribe to any particular political party. People are like, you sound a little lefty, and then the lefties go, you sound a little right-wing for me. I was like, you know, honestly, if I had to declare an allegiance somewhere, it would be impossible. I had hippie parents. I had hippie parents, and I've come from a long line of, I guess, liberal types that hang around the East Coast, where a lot of the best liberals do. And I was brought up that way. And what do you do when you're a kid? You rebel against your parents. And the way I'm rebelling against my hippie-ass parents was to move to Texas, declare myself a Republican, stop being a vegan, and start eating as much red meat as possible. I was forced to be a vegan my entire childhood. And then when I was just like, when I was free of my shackles and I was allowed to watch television and I was allowed to have artificial colors and artificial flavors, and when I was my own person and I could decide to eat meat, I made up for lost time by eating as much rare, raw, bleeding, close to life as possible. Can we still get one mooing? Just run the steer by. I'll grab a hunk off the back as long as a skilled vet could bring it to life. Red meat. And I still do. I enjoy beef, and I eat as much of it whenever I can. Whenever I get an opportunity to enjoy beef, I do exactly that. But it's part and parcel of the rebellion that you have against your parents. It's a natural thing to do. Once I think the age 13 rolls around, you start thinking, how can I be different to those losers that birthed me and brought me into the world? And now with the benefit of a little distance from that time, place, and age, I find myself being what I can best describe as hippy-dippy and weird as it sounds, a free thinker. I'm in the me party. I don't subscribe to any particular political side of the proceedings. I don't place my feet on either side of the political fence. Why? Because it limits you from calling out idiocy wherever it exists. And let's be real here, the names of the parties are increasingly meaningless as time wears on. And you know what I've noticed? I've noticed so many instances of the left and the right playing the gotcha game when it comes to the father of republicanism, Ronald Reagan, would be ashamed of your behavior today, you crazy wingnut. And a lot of Republican or Tea Party types being like, yeah, John F. Kennedy is probably turning in his grave when he sees what you libtards are up to these days. It's interesting. And what does it mean? It means that the political ideology, slapping a label on them, is increasingly meaningless. For a while, Democrats, that was being a Democrat was, during the time of John F. Kennedy, you would never find a black Democrat. Why? Because, well, Southern Democrats were predominantly made up of folks like, I don't know, the KKK. So you find yourself a little bit at odds with the other political philosophies of the Democrats back in the day if you happen to be black, because a lot of the people that you could potentially be voting for like to burn crosses and, I don't know, run around lynching people on the weekends. So all these ideologies, they